because OpenAI actually have a new fight ahead of them.
Oh, no.
Elon Musk.
Oh,
Oh, Musky boy.
he just pops up everywhere when we're talking about feuds, doesn't he?
He does. But do you know he's actually suing OpenAI? YM, OpenAI has departed from its original non-profit open source mission, Musk alleges. That it's no longer doing things to benefit humanity, but for maximizing profits.
God, a bit rich coming from him.
You think that's rich? Strap in. Hello, everyone, and welcome to The Big Con, the podcast dedicated to demystifying and simplifying the world of strategy, exploring its impact on businesses and individuals who've either harnessed it for success or maybe they've missed the mark. My name is Dale, big business nerd and self-proclaimed content aficionado.
And I'm Emily, Harvard degree candidate.
We've brought you in on the con. We're done for this season. We've shared the valuable lessons from both the failures and the triumphs of those who come before us, and now it's time for us to share the lessons that we have learned, a lessons learned episode. So, the thing is, for this season, we picked stories that were a bit more spicy, a bit more close to what's happening and rolling out currently. We went things that are happening right now. And with that comes a certain thing around stories get updated pretty quickly. And I might even suggest that what we did in a podcast episode maybe moved the market, because we released an episode on NVIDIA. You may remember this.
We did.
Their stock price is sitting at $1.7 trillion. Within minutes of us releasing that episode, their stock price skyrocketed to above $2 trillion. Did come back, but now it's sitting at about, at time of recording, above $2 trillion. It's about to eat Apple in terms of how big it is in terms of market cap.
That's crazy.
Do you think we can actually take credit for this?
I'm going to go right ahead and say absolutely not. I don't think that we really had that much of an impact, but I think that it's just a result of you being absolutely on the pulse with what's going on in the market. I do think that it would have had something to do with a lot of the things that we discussed.
They beat market expectations on what was already dizzying expectations. People were terrified that NVIDIA wasn't going to match this massive hype that they had, and they did, and they kept on going and have kept on going. So they've had days and days and days of straight gains.
That's crazy. Why do you think it's gone up so much, Dale?
The AI boom is continued. There's nothing stopping the AI boom, and they're just going to double down and get bigger in that space until something else comes along. They're just looking for the next competitor or the next thing that will stop NVIDIA at the top.
Speaking of things that are going in the opposite direction of NVIDIA, listeners may remember we did an episode on Weight Watchers a while ago.
Yes.
Oprah has quit the board. She said that it's not really around an argument or anything like with the company. One of the things that I read about was that she has been recently taking undisclosed weight loss medication. So
didn't she come out and say she was taking Ozempic?
Oh, I haven't seen that.
Maybe incorrect. And for those who don't know what Ozempic is a drug designed for type 2 diabetes patients and helps with suppressing hunger, more or less. And so people are able to take it and don't eat, and therefore are less hungry, and therefore weight is controlled. I'm sure there's a lot more science to that. So this is not a science podcast, it's a business strategy podcast, but Ozempic, it's a big thing.
Yeah, and with her role on the board, she's not allowed to speak about any other weight loss strategies. She also can't speak about it for a year after she leaves in her contract. So we might find out what the drug is.
Or the undisclosed. In our previous lessons, though, wasn't Weight Watchers pivoting into a drug-focused company anyway, in terms of they were offering medication?
Oh, yes. It was a while ago now. She's not allowed to talk about anything that is not along the Weight Watchers, that's not recommending Weight Watchers as a strategy, basically.
It has to be a Weight Watchers approved Ozempic.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
Do we think she's jumping off a sinking ship, or do we think it's going into a new era? What do you reckon?
America is still one of the most obese countries in the world, and so there's still a market for health in that respect and controlling weight. And so I think there will always be a spot for something like Weight Watchers, regardless of all the healthy connotations of putting out in the world around being healthy, and it's not all about weight, etc., etc. It's, for the most part, ingrained in who we are at this point. They're still a relevant company, is probably the main thing to call out for now.
Like we discussed, they definitely need to pivot, but I think you're right. I think there's always, as long as we are sort of advertising that happy, healthy bodies look a certain way, despite whether that's true or not, that we're always there's gonna be a market to exploit that. So yeah, I don't think that they're necessarily going to topple over tomorrow,
No,
but
if their biggest competition is something like Ozempic, and whether that's Ozempic Light or
yeah.
the natural version of Ozempic, then I imagine they would probably bring that into their product set.
That, and also there's a heap of meal plans out there these days, and meal boxes and all that sort of stuff.
HelloFresh
Heap.
has one of the most aggressive. I've used them twice. They're fine. This is not a advertisement, but they call me daily to offer me 40% off their boxes. Just
God,
take the
that's
hint,
dedication.
HelloFresh.
Yeah.
Can't find your unsubscribe button.
Another thing I'd love to talk about, Dale, is we did a episode on diversity and inclusion targets,
Mhm.
how they work and all that sort of stuff. So in the last couple of weeks, Australia has released a gender pay gap data by company assessment. So they look at specific companies and who has the biggest pay gap. So you can actually look up the pay gap in your employer to find out what it is. And some companies really did come out looking less than desirable.
Mhm.
Although, just like we looked at those DEI targets, there are some problems with data interpretation. So, for example, companies may have increased their inclusive hiring at entry level positions, starting to build that inclusion from the ground up, which is a valid strategy.
Mhm.
And it makes the weight of lower paid women heavier, but they may still be taking steps forward. And then on the flip side, there may be companies that pay all genders poorly. And so they look good because when it comes to the pay gap, it's
Like
smaller.
hospitality was looking pretty decent in general because the money's just not there.
Like, I worked in hospitality for years. It's woeful. But it sort of comes back to what we said with all these targets, I think. And I actually went to a really great seminar recently at Melbourne Uni and chatted to a woman that does a lot of inclusive research. And she said the same thing that we said, which is that DEI targets are great for review and they can help us to move towards change. But if it doesn't come with true cultural change, then we haven't really achieved anything. And I also learned about something called the glass cliff. Dale, have you heard about the glass cliff?
I know about the glass ceiling. I did not know about the glass cliff.
Yeah, so the glass cliff was a concept that actually has been studied and it came out about 15 years ago through research. And so basically, the research showed that women CEOs tend to get appointed to precarious positions. So they finally get to the top, but only in a position of great risk that not many men are willing to take on because that position is doubtful as to whether they can turn this company around. So it may be a failing company. It may be a company that has like aggressively terrible culture.
Some of which we've covered on this season with something like Lindy Accarino going to X. But it's a
Well,
thing.
and also, this may hark back to our friend of the podcast, Meg Whitman, and how she was
Meggles!
I know, how she was commonly around when big companies had some massive failures. And that may and likely, as we've said, she's had some great success, but it may have had more to do with the fact that in her sort of era in particular.
She took those swings.
So while we do have some women CEOs coming up and about thanks to DEI consideration, we also have to be aware of how we're promoting women, what state we're putting them in, and is it equal? Is it an equal position, even though it's got the same title? So I thought that was very interesting.
Fascinating. I think there was some other commentary regarding the data that was released around like airline targets were notoriously bad in
Yes.
women getting paid substantially less than men. And some of the commentary was, well, are we going to pay flight attendants, which is predominantly a women-focused market, and pilots, which
Still dominated by men.
is the expectation that we pay those pilots the same as we pay the attendants? And the
Yeah.
answer is probably no. But then it's like, okay, then what are we doing to get women into that position? It's probably more than just the issue regarding what Jetstar or Qantas are doing in that space, but what are we doing in the training grounds? Like, how are we
Yes.
making the aviation degrees really palatable to women and changing that culture to be like, yeah, can you see yourself in this? Or are they
Yeah.
going to go to a different degree that's particularly traditionally the same. The similar commentary was around some of the back office jobs. And one of the banks didn't look too great. And the commentary was, well, there's a lot of women in customer service facing roles because it's a little bit more entry level versus the back office staff, the data engineers who have, again, can be quite a male dominated workforce.
They're attracted to that space because it's a safe space for them. If women aren't encouraged to go into those spaces, women have the exact same ability to do all of that. But it's like if you're going into a male dominated area, it's not as comfortable as it is if there's more women there. So it's about creating a space that is safe for all genders.
Which we may not get to. We might not actually get to. Like there is differences in what males and females and everyone in between likes. And so there's going to be things that are designed that are going to put people in a space of not being comfortable or not being what they want.
The gender pay gap data is interesting. It has a lot to be interpreted, and there's a lot of work to be done that is more societal, I think, than down to one company.
100%.
Dale, I reckon we should take a break and then come back and talk about the con of the season. What do you reckon?
Yes, because the story of the season, for me at least, has a little bit more to give. All right, Em, we are back. And this second portion of the show is going to be entirely dedicated to one thing: AI. And it's just exciting. I'm geeking out about it so much. You've been on the webs. You've seen some people who are bringing some AI to the masses, or at least their masses.
Absolutely. Remember when we did an episode on PwC?
Mm-hmm.
And they have released their own version of a chatbot assistant. And this is to help the consultants sort of pull together client information,
Do some more
write
consulting.
reports, do consulting.
More PowerPoint decks. Love it.
And they've done this to prevent using public AI systems while working with sensitive client data. And obviously, this is good.
Positive.
They said that the staff still need to go through like rigorous training programs before using it, which is great. And they also mentioned that they will not be changing the training programs around the work that the staff need to do. So that the work the staff are doing is still to the highest of quality. So they're just basically using the AI to assist and supplement, not replace, which I feel and hope is the future of AI. But I wonder, Dale, if the hot water we saw PwC get into around conflicts of interest, and guys, if you haven't listened to that episode, I do highly recommend it because it was a very interesting piece.
Still falling out. They're still falling out. They've just had to recently lay off 380 PwC workers. And they're saying it's because of the fallout of the tax scandals. And they've actually brought some partners' retirement forward because of just how widespread it was. But they're on the straight and narrow now. Everything's good. No stress. PwC, we're good. They were chatbot.
I wonder if this kind of conflict of interest situation might not be exacerbated here unless they have very strict ways that they manage client data within the AI system. Like, are they going to be spitting out reports that are all very similar, or are they going to be sharing data between different companies to come up with, ways forward that one might get a better outcome than the other? Like, how does this work?
You know what I think you're suggesting?
What?
I think you're suggesting that a big, giant company like PwC is that right now it's good that they are inefficient, that for whatever reason, Paul the consultant, is about to go into a meeting. It really needs to quickly have some information about a company on agriculture, for instance. And so hopefully he could just pull up PwC bot and be like, PwC bot, please tell me what's some information I need to know to wow these customers. But because of the inefficiency in systems in pre-AI days, he can't do that right now. And so he has to use original thought and so, or good judgment and do it the right way. Yes and no and.
I think you've taken what I've said and been like, this is only bad if this happens. I think that what I kind of mean is, if we are going to get these AI systems into place, and we know that we have conflict of interest and like issues with conflict of interest in the past, then we absolutely need to set up systems so that the AI is not going to exacerbate that situation. When you send chat GPT a whole bunch of information and then you go, oh, and can you actually do this as well? And you send it more, it uses all the information that it's gathered from you to spit out a different answer. So there's going to be amalgamations of different client data unless they make it really, really different, I think.
And it all starts from culture. And so as long as the culture there is for original thought and to use your own judgment, then I don't think they've got a problem. And that only comes from, I think, and actually using these tools and using these more and understanding where you should start and stop. So the AI episode we talked about this year was around that cyborgs and centaurs mentality, where cyborgs, they are so intertwined in however they use AI that they use it like their arm or they're a part of their body. Whereas I think this is probably where a centaur mentality needs to take over, where there's a half man, half horse, and the man bit needs to know where he's doing the work and or she's doing the work, and the horse bit needs to know, which the horse in this scenario is the AI, needs to be doing their work. And so I think there's a certain amount of like delegation that needs to occur for companies like this to be able to use this bot. I also just think that this is just the only bit of good news that PwC has been able to release recently, and so they were pretty happy to say, yeah, look, we've got a chatbot now. Look how we've got, yeah, it's pretty good. So yes, but as long as your culture's fine. Speaking of culture,
tell me.
My favorite story of this season was around OpenAI. And you may remember the famous ousting of Sam Altman, who was the head of OpenAI. So a little bit of a minor update. Since we last spoke very recently, and for those who only get their news from the Big Con podcast, OpenAI had a board that was heavily weighted in Microsoft's favor. So Sam Altman was fired, he got pushed off the board, got rehired, and there was a brand new board. They've recently taken some good old-fashioned Big Con advice, OpenAI has, and brought in an external law firm in Wilmer Hale to look into the messy firing and rehiring schmozzle. The board statement that I think Sam probably wrote states that the whole debacle was a consequence of a breakdown in the relationship and loss of trust between the prior board and Mr. Altman. They've done other things. They brought in a whistleblower hotline. They've updated their governance processes and they've strengthened their conflict of interest process. OpenAI, you're looking pretty good right now. In a less than stunning turn of events, Sam Altman is now back on the board. Long live Altman. As well as Sue Desmond-Hellmann. She's a former CEO of the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. Nicole Seligman, a former president of Sony Entertainment. And Fidji Simo, CEO of Instacart. And something I learned just this morning, that they did approach Disney CEO Bob Iger to be on the board. He said no because he kind of needs to remain a bit impartial in these AI wars. But for me, it smells like OpenAI is gearing up for deals with content companies. Because the media and the content companies, they're a little bit upset that all these AI models have been trained on all their content and they haven't received any money for it. So, OpenAI, right now, they're at the center of a lot of this AI. They're not the strongest. There is other AI models that are taking over them and winning on different tests, etc. But they're pretty good. They seem strong. They seem put together, which is good because OpenAI actually have a new fight ahead of them.
Oh no,
Elon Musk. Oh, Musky boy. He
pops up everywhere when we're talking about feuds, doesn't he?
He does. He had a decent run in our X episode, but do you know he's actually suing OpenAI? Why, Em? Well, the firm, being OpenAI, has departed from its original non-profit open source mission, Musk alleges. That it's no longer doing things to benefit humanity, but for maximizing profits.
God, a bit rich coming from him.
You think that's rich? Strap in. Punters are crying foul towards Musk, and he may be a very problematic individual, let's be honest, but something about his argument makes the whole thing a little grayer than it is black and white. But to understand, we have to go back. We have an AI company called DeepMind. And in 2014, they've got all these geniuses working on what AI is and what artificial and general intelligence will be. So the big kahuna of AI. Google swings in 2014 and buys this company for a measly $400 million. To put that in context, 2 years beforehand, Facebook bought Instagram and its 13 employees for $1 billion.
Whoa.
So, this buying DeepMind, which...
Instagram only have 13 employees when Zuckerberg bought it?
According to that one article I read, yes.
Oh my God.
Now, Google has just bought a AI company. So, think about buying an AI company now. In 2014, for $400 million, it gives Google a monopoly on AI talent and potentially means that whatever AI becomes, Google's got it. Google becomes this big hive mind. They already have access to all of our emails, thanks to Gmail, all of our search, because we just use the search that's on Google, and also YouTube. So they've got huge swaths of content that they can use for this Google AI, whatever it's going to be.
Mm.
This gives Elon Musk the heebie-jeebies. Elon is scared. Now, this is kind of before Elon's supervillain days, his attention addiction space, and he's pretty vocal that he needs to find a new planet. So he's building rockets through SpaceX. He needs to save the planet. So he's doing giant batteries through Tesla. The other thing he's really scared of is AI taking over the planet and enslaving humanity. Elon is so scared that he tries to block the sale of DeepMind, and he offers $500 million from his PayPal friends to try and block the deal. But this does not scare Google, and Google ends up acquiring DeepMind.
Still for the 400 million.
400 million.
Nice.
Larry Page, the founder of Google, is reportedly, and again, this is from Elon, and Elon's a bit of a PR master, so he's take it with a grain of salt. He calls up Elon, he's like, Elon, mate, chill a bit, that whatever happens, even if we do create AI and enslaves humanity, it's just the natural cause of things. It's evolution. Don't be so specious, Elon, mate. It's going to happen. The heebie-jeebies continue. Larry and Elon fall out, and Elon needs a friend. So who does he call up? Sam Altman, the president of Y Combinator at times, something else we've covered on this season. They partner on a mission to create a company that champions open, safe AI, hence the name OpenAI. It's something that they kind of want to do with inside Y Combinator. They use the talent and the incubator mindset in that space that's worked really well for companies like Airbnb. They describe it as the Manhattan Project for AI. I personally would love to work on some form of Manhattan Project for something, but it's a research project to fight evil old Google and their super AI. They have put in safety mechanisms, so like no one would actually technically own OpenAI. Sam Altman still does not have any shares in OpenAI, but OpenAI could be owned by Y Combinator as a way to kind of influence people to come on board, etc., etc. Over 5 years, so we're thinking about that 2014 to 2019 period, Elon gives $50 million of his own money to OpenAI for operating costs. Much of this is for talent. Now, there's silly stories of Google paying tens of millions of dollars per year to these AI scientists, a decent salary, and OpenAI trying to match it, including one of the lead researchers at Google DeepMind, who becomes OpenAI's chief scientist, Ilya Sutskever, who may remember leads to the ousting of Sam Altman just about a year ago. There's an email from Elon Musk saying, do whatever it takes. That's what I imagine it sounds like. DeepMind is causing me extreme mental stress. If they win, it will be really bad news with their one mind to rule the world philosophy. To be honest, I'm going to side with Elon this time. I'm also a little bit scared. Let's jump to 2018. And after a board coup, OpenAI, at it again, Musk leaves the company. One reason is that he feels that they're falling behind. Another is that Elon maybe tried to take over and it didn't go great.
That sounds about right.
He suggested merging it with Tesla, which famously is building an AI for self-driving cars. Apparently, it's not gone too well. It doesn't go his way, and he says, my probability assessment of OpenAI being relevant to DeepMind without a dramatic change in execution and resources is 0%. Not 1%. I wish it were otherwise. Elon out. Now, as you know, OpenAI has gone from strength to strength and is now valued at $80 billion. Good on them. I will quote Elon here from a CNBC interview, because this is the grey bit that makes his argument to me a little bit more, yeah, maybe he's got a point. It does seem weird that something can be a non-profit, open source, and somehow transform itself into a for-profit, closed-sourced company, says Musk. This would be like, let's say you funded an organization to save the Amazon rainforest. Instead, they became a lumber company, chopped down the forest and sold it for money. And if you think about OpenAI, it's now effectively a subsidiary of Microsoft, who owned 49% of OpenAI. It's the most Microsoft being the most valuable company in the world. Microsoft CEO Satya Nadella said at the height of the OpenAI drama last year, OpenAI disappears tomorrow. We have all the IP, all the rights, and all the capability. We have the people, we have the computer, we have the data, we have everything. We are below them, we are above them, and around them. So OpenAI, some questions are being directed at you, and reasonably so. you could be a better guy here. Now, what doesn't look good for Musk is the position that he's in. This is a story for me of a sore loser who was in a fantastic club, he got booted, and he's now trying to do his own thing in releasing X. And on X, there's a thing called the Grok, which is kind of like ChatGPT. It's apparently a little bit more sassy and uses words like boobs and penis a lot, but it's an AI chatbot in X, formerly Twitter, from
Oh
Elon's
my
X AI
God.
company. So he's got his own AI company and being like, yeah, yours is bad, but mine's pretty good. To be clear, X is a for-profit company. Also, it doesn't look great that OpenAI is releasing emails between Elon and OpenAI at the time that have Elon co-designing the for-profit plans so that they can afford more graphics chips and computing power from NVIDIA, but not agreeing on the terms.
This goes back to sort of what we talked about in the X episode, which is, does he know what he's doing, or is he just a giant man baby? And like with some good ideas, like it's like if you throw something at something for a long enough time, you're gonna hit it.
I don't think there's a Venn. I think there's a Venn diagram where that's okay. As in, I
Yes, I
think he
see.
is both a man baby, and I think he is probably quite intelligent in
Yes.
certain or surrounds himself with very intelligent people.
Yes.
But this is lessons learned, Em. So what's the
Yeah.
lessons here? And there's two. Thing one, PR, messaging and communications. They're powerful. There are two big dogs now controlling the message. You got Musk painting OpenAI to be this evil people rallying the troops. It's actually amazing to see one of the richest men in the world trying to play himself off as the people's champion, as an underdog. Similarly, you got OpenAI releasing the emails in a pretty impressively detailed press release. It's a master act, and commentators love it. It shows Musk being Musk, and it paints a brilliant narrative. So you got these two warring narratives that are both just juicy in itself.
Yeah.
The second thing, and it's a lesson I'm going to be taking to heart quite a lot, is that I'm kind of glad that things like this are happening, that someone or something is keeping these things in check. The
Yeah.
lessons of the last few years, whether it's runaway tech platforms, giant environmental disasters, and so much more, it seems like the government, which should be keeping these things in check, they just can't
Yeah.
anymore. It's too big.
No, they're behind.
The changes are too fast. They're too big and require too much resources to ensure that they can go their way. So sure, it's ugly when things happen like this. It's also great to read, but it's happening from a perspective of more joint interest.
Yeah.
So right now, there seems to be a more significant predator just waiting, ready to pounce, entirely powered by self-interest. And for that, I'm a little bit glad, as long as there's another predator after that, to keep these things in check.
It seems like Silicon Valley are self-policing a little bit in terms of, and maybe it's because they are battling for power. Like
Mm.
maybe the motivations are impure, but it seems like they are self-policing, and they need to, because we've seen with all the trials with Zuck going on, they're entering into uncharted territory and into really big spaces that can have really big fallouts that we might not even know what they are yet. So having people having these kinds of arguments, discussions, whatever you want to call them, and competing for the same sort of outcome, then you get criticism and you get competition and you get thinking into things more deeply than if you were just, bulldozing your own way down unimpeded.
Friction is good.
And I think that, a thing that we do is we tie it all back to, freelancers, you might be working in an office. We like to bring it back to our audience and who they are. Friction is good in the office, and we like to avoid friction. That is our absolute first instinct, is to avoid friction. I'm not going to tell them that idea is shit because I don't want to be an asshole, and I don't want to be perceived to be an asshole. But if we don't have a culture where you can say, mate, I can see some real pitfalls. This you've got a solid idea and I can see some major pitfalls with that. Let's, collaborate and reconstruct. If you don't have a safe space to say that, then you're in absolute strife, because you can't let someone just go unimpeded, because people will have seen things coming and they won't have spoken up, and then the pitfall will happen. It's what we see again and again and again in this podcast.
Speak up. everyone.
So, Dale, do we think that because AI has been such a theme throughout our season, and because, it's the future of where business is going, we might call it the con of the season?
It is the con of the season.
It
And
is.
it's by far, AI is definitely the con of the season.
And speaking of AI cons, did you see the Willy Wonka fail in Scotland?
So good.
They advertised a kids' wonderland that was supposed to be Willy Wonka's factory in pictures, but it was generated by AI, all the advertisements. So when the kids got there, it was a devastatingly massive failure because there was nothing but a sad looking lady dressed as an Oompa Loompa with a chemistry equipment that kind of looked like a meth lab. So it's so funny. The memes are very, very good. Well
Mm,
done, internet. But they did say they were let down by suppliers. That was sort of their, it was their fire fest, I guess.
mm.
Dale, do you think this opens up a potential issue and a new gap sort of in AI advertising and what you can deliver? So being like over promise, under deliver, or is just a poorly managed event, or is it both?
D, all of the above. Poorly managed event. I think people should use tools like AI to help things like an event like this. It's just seemed like they didn't have the execution bit. I find it really interesting that you called out Fire Festival. The creator of Fire Festival reached out to the Willy Wonka team and said,
No.
you interested in doing something else? Hey, let's pair up.
No way. And guys, if you don't know about Fire Festival, there's a really brilliant documentary. I believe it's on Netflix. You have to watch it. It's wild. One of the
He's
biggest
just
business failures of all time.
he's just come out of jail.
Yeah. And he's about to do another one. He's collecting money for another festival and people are
he's
buying tickets.
he's doing a lot of things. It's resilient is, I think, what I'll tell him. I also loved that they didn't just use it for advertising; they used it to write a script for people to navigate through in as they
No.
got to the event, and it dreamed up characters that didn't exist that were called. One was called the Unknown, which was just a man in a skull makeup who would come out from behind a mirror and say, "I am the unknown," and that's it. And so I think it just says what people should use AI for right now is a crutch
Mhm.
and the start of an idea. It can't organize your whole event. And other thing it could have done is been like, hey, listen, anything I'm missing, it's actually not too bad at giving you some advice around party planning. And it would have probably said, yeah, more than just two perspex Willy Wonka-esque Roald Dahl things maybe would have been better.
Oh, God, really let the kids down.
Meth lab is a apt description. Well, listeners, there you have it. You now understand a little bit more of the con. We hope that you have avoided accidentally hosting Kids Meth Lab in the future. If you haven't already, please subscribe to Big Con Podcast. Not only supports us, but means you'll get the latest episodes straight to your device. We're taking a little bit of a break for a little bit, but we'll be back soon. Date to be determined.
Yep.
But you only find out if you subscribe to the feed. Yeah, see what I did
That's
there?
true.
Please do not keep all the fun to yourself. Share the con around. Your mother, your aunt, your best friend's brother. Tell them to check us out on all their favorite podcast apps. Don't send ChatGPT to be able to listen to us. It doesn't have that features yet. For any further details, head over to our website, thebiggestconsultingagency.com, and sign up for the mailing list. Bye for now.
Bye.
This podcast was recorded on the lands of the Wurrung language group. Always was, always will be Aboriginal land.